So I've actually gotten this comment quite a bit, and initially when I heard it, I was thinking, well, I don't know how much would actually change, and also, how would I even approach doing a video like this? Now, obviously you can tell by the title, I'm talking about what if Tanjiro actually became a demon slayer earlier on, and there's a couple reasons why I was skeptical about doing this topic, but I decided, you know what, why not? Let's do it. And it's gonna be, not your typical what if, you could say. But for starters, there's very few times in the story that it would even make sense, logically, to have Tanjiro go off and be a demon slayer. And a couple of the other ways that you could actually see Tanjiro doing this would be kind of awkward. But a lot of them do deal with his father himself, and you would more or less have to lead it into the idea that his father actually decides to more or less invoke that Tanjiro goes off and becomes a demon slayer. Now, there's some massive issues with this idea, because let's say Tanjiro's father decides, hey, I want him to be strong. I want him to be a demon slayer. I want him to fight alongside other demon slayers and so on, which is definitely an interesting take on the character, but he also would most likely end up training the one and only Tanjiro, teaching him a lot of things way earlier on than he would possibly learn in the normal canon of Demon Slayer. But here's the thing, a lot would change at the very beginning of the story, because Tanjiro wouldn't necessarily even be there. Now, let's say somehow his father decides, I'm going to send off Tanjiro at a young age, maybe teach him the basics when he's more or less at a younger age, and he would send him off to be a demon slayer, or at least train amongst demon slayers. This does take some massive creativity, or creative liberty, that's what I meant, creative liberty, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of missing spots that we're talking about. But let's just say that he's able to be sent off to become a demon slayer. Let's just say that this version of Tanjiro would be pretty damn strong, because I could only really see a young version of Tanjiro learning from his father, learning a couple skills, maybe even sword skills, maybe get a grasp on how to actually use concentration breathing, and learning exactly what his father is utilizing. Now, this would help him massively in the near future, especially once he arrives at the Hashira Mansion or the Butterfly Mansion. Now, this obviously takes creative liberties, like I've said before. I mean, there's a good chance he just doesn't show up here, and there's a lot of other things that could go along. Maybe send him off to like some random demon slayer trainer type of thing, but just for story's sake, we'll send him to the Butterfly Mansion, and we'll more or less have him train with people like Kanao and other demon slayers that are already there. More specifically though, Kanao would benefit him massively. She's already pretty strong, and she ends up being extremely strong, so having a training partner like that who they can actually grow up and more or less learn together, it would be super beneficial for both of them, like hands down. Now, visits with obviously Tanjiro's family would be limited to none. I mean, at the end of the day, we know that becoming a demon slayer is a very long and arduous task. And yes, technically you could say, oh, this isn't Tanjiro becoming a demon slayer actually, so on and so forth, because you're not officially a demon slayer, but I would argue that he's at least starting the pathway to that demon slayer hood, so he can actually become a demon slayer then and there. Now, you could say, oh, maybe we have him take the final selection early and so on, but there's really no reason for that, and I don't really want to force that upon this version of Tanjiro. I don't think that makes sense, but actually putting him in the frame of the Demon Slayers, so where the Demon Slayers are, and get him the proper training to be a Demon Slayer, would be something that would benefit him way more at a younger age than it would, obviously, at an older age that we saw Tanjiro initially do at that. So it would eventually lead him to the final selection, but by this point, he would have an understanding of probably a miscellaneous breathing style, maybe like something like flower breathing, but I could also see it going kind of a different direction where you have them basically take Tanjiro under their wing, and by what I mean by them is any of the Hashira, and it could be really anybody. It could be a Tomioka, it could be a Rengoku, it could be a Shinobu, but in my opinion, it would most likely lead him to a Rengoku and learn about the techniques of sun breathing far earlier on, so it can actually help him in the massive long run. But here's the main issue that I can see with the story, is that, well, I don't see Nezuko even being a part of it necessarily. I mean, if Muzan decides that he's going to show up and basically, defeat his whole family, I guess that's the nice way of putting it, and then infect Nezuko into becoming a demon, Tanjiro would most likely just not be there. He would most likely, at least, not be there. Of course, there's a chance you could say, oh, maybe it was during a random visit, but most scenarios would lead to him not being at home when this occurs, leading to Nezuko probably dying by another Hashira, or flat out just, not showing up at all, or dying by just a random demon slayer. Now, there's massive issues, and I'm sure a lot of you understand that, with Nezuko not being in the story, and that would more specifically lead to them just not being able to defeat Muzan, and Muzan just straight up not being able to do anything, at least to the extent of conquering the sun. So this whole generation of demon slayers would end up not mattering at all. It's tough to say that, but it is the truth. I mean, without a lot of the open-ended type of problem solving that Nezuko would end up bringing, indirectly, of course, because it's not like she's like some intelligent being that gave them all the answers, but she did solve a bunch of problems, a lot of these open-ended problems for them, with being able to give her blood and being able to conquer the sun and so on and so forth. And luckily enough, she was able to do that, because they would end up winning because of her, with cures and her being practically bait and then curing her and so on. But that's beyond the point at this moment, because this version of Nezuko is either long gone or dead, and there's a good chance that she would just end up dying anyways. That there's no way that some random demon slayer would find mercy on her, and especially if she does kill humans or eat humans, which we saw was a real possibility in the earlier stages, and the only reason why she didn't was because of Tanjiro. And that would lead down a path of, yes, Tanjiro being pretty damn strong, in my opinion, and earlier on learning sun-breathing Tanjiro, a Tanjiro that's worked with Hashiras, have trained day in and day out with someone like Kanao, and probably have leveled up to a very, very high scale, maybe even to the point that he's on the level of some of the other Hashira sooner than you can possibly imagine. But of course, I normally give you kind of these two pathways that could make things occur a certain way or whatever. So why not? Let's give another pathway that I believe could have occurred if Tanjiro did become a demon slayer earlier on. And that would involve Tanjiro's family and also himself and Nezuko being encountered by Muzan a little bit earlier. By a little bit, I mean a good bit earlier. So Muzan would do what he normally does, trying to find someone to conquer the sun and stuff like that, leading to a Nezuko and Tanjiro having to kind of fight with each other. Now, this is a younger Nezuko, so I could conceivably say that she wouldn't be able to kill Tanjiro, and maybe there's a chance that Tanjiro flips her mindset and is like, oh yeah, I'm your brother, blah, blah, blah. Now, things get a little bit awkward, because in this pathway and in this second path, talk about creative liberties, I gotta take a ton of them, because there's really no way for Tanjiro to become an absolute demon slayer earlier on from here on, because, well, Gyu won't show up. And Giyu in this scenario will not show up to help him, and there's a good chance that no one shows up to help him, and he's going to have to kind of find his own way. And really, the only real way I can see this going would be Tanjiro kind of being on his own with Nezuko for a long time. Maybe finding a way to actually turn Nezuko's mind, at least to a certain extent, so that she doesn't, go completely buck wild and try to, eat people. So this would lead to Tanjiro kind of hiding out for a while, scrounging for food, trying to live without the family he once had. And this is a younger Tanjiro. So keep that in mind. This is not your same-aged, responsible Tanjiro. This is a younger version of him. And in terms of creative liberties, I would have to take one in terms of he can't stay like this for a very long time. He would end up probably dying. So you would have to lean toward maybe someone like Urokodaki finding him, maybe a different Hashira, maybe just a stray demon slayer, and they would allow him to basically get help and eventually enter the scope of training as well. Now, Nezuko would not be taken in very lightly because Nezuko is a demon, and no one else around, like Urokodaki, like a Giyu, can vouch for her to actually be a good demon. So there's a chance that we actually see Tanjiro kind of go, in a way, incognito or rogue, just because there's no way that he can actually allow his sister to be killed. So for a long time, he probably would hide her, probably convincing her to hide away, maybe hide in caves and different areas, and he would continue to do this throughout the time while he's getting training, learning, and I would still conceivably see that he would have a lot of information still from his father, but this time around in this scenario, he would not be sent off. He would not be sent off like, the previous scenario I was talking about, but he would have a lot more information than normal, which would be massively beneficial for Tanjiro, massively beneficial for his training. So when he would get the training, a lot of things would go similar with Kanao and everybody else training, and maybe a Hashira training with him, but he would continue trying to keep his sister alive, well, and also completely defended. But even with that said, he has to really take in all the training he can get, because eventually they would find out about Nezuko insisting to actually kill her. Now, without the vouch of Urokodaki and Giyu, we're talking about a very, very bad and odd scenario that would go pretty bad for Tanjiro. Tanjiro would have to go off on his own, kind of isolate himself, and stay away from all the demon slayers to a large possibility, and kind of go through his normal pathway in terms of fighting and different missions. So all the missions you normally would see from Tanjiro, maybe after the final selection, stuff like the swamp demon, stuff like the whole first meeting with Muzan and Lady Tamayao would go very similar, but the difference would be the interaction with Lady Tamayao would be actually a little bit different, a little bit. Now, I'm sorry for saying actually so much. I want to bring that up because I know I just said that like 3 times in a row. But Tanjiro would have a different interaction with her. And the reason for this is mainly because he's trying to figure out how he's supposed to do this on his own. So it could lead him to get a little bit more help from Lady Tamayao and Yushiro himself. Maybe gain information about different demon slayer breathing styles and so on and so forth. And this could lead him down the path of finding more about sun breathing, benefiting him as well. But the main issue is he's not going to be able to have the traditional sense of, being able to fight. Yes, his training would be beneficial at a younger age, and he would be at a much higher level than he would in normal canon. The fight with the 2 demons that hunt him down, that Muzan normally sends after him, would be an easy fight. And arguably he could be on the level of Rui at this point because of the extra training he had. And I say it all the time, but the training length of time matters so much for demon slayers. We've seen demon slayers grow immensely fast, and we're talking about a Tanjiro that trains with Kanao, someone that is stronger than Inosuke and Zenitsu, or at least to a large extent is for the most of the story, if not all of the story. So he's going to benefit from that training a ton. And once he's able to get more information about sun breathing and more information about the breathing style that he should truly be perfecting, I mean, we're talking about a Tanjiro that is easily, in my opinion, on the same level as a Rui. So yes, I am skipping the whole mansion arc. We would still pick up both Zenitsu and Inosuke, but of course they won't matter as much because Tanjiro will literally have to kind of be isolated away from them, or at least that's what he thinks initially, that he believes that he needs to stay isolated away from them because they might tell that he's actually harboring the demon still and they're going to come after him. Now, this is where I believe he will be able to prove to them that Nezuko is okay, but also that he is powerful enough to take her out if need be. Now, this would lead him to killing Rui, something that most demon slayers at his level, or quote-unquote at his rank, would not be able to do. This is a Hashira level feat at the end of the day, and yes, I know Rui did split his power up, but at the end of the day, we are talking about the 12 Kizuki. If you're able to kill one, you are on Hashira level. It is that simple. And obviously there's other ways to get to Hashira level, but this is one of them. And I truly believe that this version of Tanjiro will be stronger and better than the version before. Yes, I know he's lacking the water breathing training from Urokodaki, but do not forget that he had all that training most likely at a Hashira mansion or Butterfly Mansion. You guys know what I mean. But it would most likely lead him there, and he would get instruction, and he would have extra instruction from his father that passed away a long time ago, and he would gain more information, most likely from Lere Tamayao, who has lived hundreds of years. This would benefit him so massively. I think putting him on the level of Rui, if not above it, and killing Rui would be that next step to actually putting him in a proper place to have some sort of sway in the decision of keeping Nezuko alive. Now, from here on out, it's really a decision of what you believe to be true. Will Tanjiro be able to sway the Hashira and also the Demon Slayers to think that it's okay for Nezuko to be here? Especially because without the kind of mind manipulation that Urokodaki does, do you think she would actually be able to resist the blood? I think so, at least personally. So once she's able to show the Wind Hashira that she can resist the blood that he's tempting her with, it's over. It's done. It's wrapped up, and it's proof that she's fine and that she's a good demon, which is something that everybody would be completely shocked by. But I do believe that this would end up being the way, and Tanjiro would be greeted in practically with open arms, not needing to be as isolated anymore. Now, this would be the path where, well, Tanjiro would just get so strong, way stronger than normal in my opinion, because he's at a higher starting point, or what we call a higher floor, and leading him to the normal ceiling that he can hit, or maybe even a higher ceiling than the normal canon version of Tanjiro, being able to more or less utilize sun breathing at a higher level already, have a ton of training under his belt with the from a younger age because he was with the Demon Slayers, and so on and so forth. And this would just benefit him so massively. So in this scenario, I do believe that it would lead down the pathway of them obviously still winning and defeating Muzan at the very final countdown, or the sunrise countdown arc. Now, I want to bring this up because I am going to kind of go back and forth a little bit here with the first scenario and this scenario. Because the first scenario is completely different because, well, you just don't get an ending. You literally will not get an ending. Tanjiro will not be able to defeat Muzan. Nobody will be able to defeat Muzan. It was very crucial that they had that antidote or that cure for being a demon to basically have Muzan be weakened massively. Now, without that, it is a struggle fest. It is extremely difficult. Obviously, in the second scenario, they definitely are going to end up having that, and they're going to have a somewhat stronger Tanjiro because of how much extra training he has gone through and the level of sun breathing he would be at by the final battle arc or the Infinity Castle leading into the Sunrise Countdown arc. So this is more or less what I believe would have occurred if Tanjiro became quote-unquote a Demon Slayer earlier on. I know technically I didn't make him go through the final selection earlier on or something like that, but it's still in the same boat. Training to become a Demon Slayer earlier on and then becoming one is in the same boat as becoming a Demon Slayer earlier on. Because if he was a Demon Slayer earlier on, he still would have been forced to do all of that training because they would have seen that, okay, he's not ready to go out. I mean, he's too young, of course, right? He's not ready to go out just yet, so let's keep him here, keep him training. So that same storyline pathway would be exactly the same as long as he was prepared to defeat the final selection. He would have probably even been a little bit younger when defeating the final selection if you want to go that route. But still, it would kind of lead to, in my opinion, those two pathways or those two scenarios that I set up for you. One being without Nezuko, one being with Nezuko. But I would love to hear what you guys have to think. What you think would have occurred if Tanjiro became a Demon Slayer earlier on. Do you think some other outlandish thing would have occurred? Do you think a different pathway? Do you agree with my number one scenario, maybe my number two scenario? Either way, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I know I said at the very beginning this would be a different type of what if, so I would love to know if you guys like this style. Maybe you like the style where I don't really give a generalized breakdown. I talk about every single arc and how it would be different or how it would be worse, better, same, so on. Let me know what you guys think. Overall, I hope y'all enjoyed the video though, and if you did, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all of that good stuff, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.